Right, so today is that all-important Marvel's Avengers character roster tier list. We've got a new character, Black Panther. Been really loving him. We all want to know where I've put him on the list. I'm sure that's the main reason why people are watching this video, just to see where he's ended up. But I'm going to make you wait, because that's what YouTubers do to get that watch time in. But I will go through all the characters. So yeah, Black Panther's going to be the main topic of conversation here. But you know, all the other characters I've kind of talked about where I think they are. My opinion has changed, because every day my opinion changes, because every day I get more experience with these characters. I get more of a feel for these characters, and I kind of learn more about the game and how the game works, and just seeing how characters go from how characters play and what is good and what's not good about characters and how characters work in the game is really important. And that's something that I'm learning as well. I'm learning the mechanics as I go as well. And like, you have to think of how characters work in each game mode. Like, are there characters that work well against Monica that don't work well in the OLT? Are there characters that work well in the OLT that don't work well anywhere else? And are there characters that work well nowhere? Starting off, we're going to start off with the D tier. The D tier has one character in it, and that one character is Kate Bishop. I've made it very apparent that I don't like playing as Kate Bishop. She's not fun. She just lacks any kind of survivability. And every time that I've brought up Kate Bishop's survivability, people are like, oh, you need this one exotic that brings up Jarvis barrier. And I shouldn't have to rely on an exotic to make a character usable. I shouldn't have to rely on something that may never drop for the character to be usable or fun to play. Outside of that, if you're going through her story, she's fine there because everything's tuned for you to be able to breeze through it. But outside of that, if you're going to play as Kate Bishop for any other piece of content outside of her story, you're going to struggle, unless if you do get lucky and get that exotic, but it's all about luck with that. And I hate that she doesn't have anything on her kit, her base kit, that lends itself towards a more defensive style of play. If she's going in and she's like the ultimate glass cannon, you know, that's not really my play style. I will say that this list is entirely subjective. There is no objective opinion on here. There is no best character. There is no worst character. It's just my opinion on where I think these characters go and what I think about each character. If you're going to be like, oh, but my Kate Bishop is really good and I'd put her in S tier, more power to you. But where I am right now, I don't enjoy Kate Bishop, and I probably never will, and she'll probably stay in D tier, or I'll add another tier below this when more characters get introduced to kind of demonstrate how I feel about this character, which is not very highly. C tier, Iron Man. Iron Man used to be my main character. Iron Man used to be my favourite character in the game, way back at launch. Coming out of it, there's a lot of things that frustrate me about the character. His survivability is lacking. He can fly, which is good for some parts, not so good for others. He's ranged, mainly, which is good for some things, not very good for others. But he is a character that demonstrates a big problem with the game for me, and that is characters having assault heroics that are just a beam forward or an attack that goes straight in one direction forward. The lack of AoE for any character in this game is a massive thing for me, and why, you know, why I put my S tier character in S tier, and why I put the characters that do have that like beam forward attack as low as I did. I just think having so many characters that do that, it makes it feel less unique, and it makes it feel like, even though the amount of enemies that spawn lends the game towards a more AoE focused combat, those attacks kind of take away from what the amount of enemies would suggest that they would do. The Hulkbuster is still fun, and the Hulkbuster is why he's a step above D tier, but I do think, but it doesn't last long enough. That's the biggest thing. Even if you do build into it, buff into it, it doesn't last long enough, and you'll be taking most of the mission to get the Hulkbuster, for the Hulkbuster to last like 2 rounds of rockets. Not great. B tier is Black Widow and Kamala Khan. I'm gonna go into why Kamala is lower than Black Widow. Kamala is in B tier because her healing is nice, but there's so many more healers in the game now. Like, every character has a heal on their base kit. Her heal is still good, and she does revive characters with her heal and everything, but she doesn't do much outside of that. Her attacks are good, her animations are good. She has AoE into her intrinsic, but also her assault is another launch forward attack, which is a thing that I've said is quite annoying. Her damage is good, and her ultimate isn't as good as Iron Man's, because she can still take damage in it, but it does last longer than the Hulkbuster, so I'll give it that, and it does change her attacks a bit, so I'll give her that. Black Widow is kind of the ultimate middle of the road character for me. She's really fun, her animations are great, but again, not even a beam forward, it's like a ball that stays in the area. She does have a good ultimate heroic, but her invisibility is kind of useless, and like, her assault doesn't really do enough, but everything else in her kit is fine. Again, survivability is kind of a problem, but invisibility kind of negates that. You can go invisible and then get your shit ton of damage in, and then go ranged, which she does have like one of the best ranged in the game. She can do like the highest damage, and she can put out the most hits per second, like, compared to the rest of the roster, but it's just her damage numbers kind of need to be bumped up a bit, and she needs to have some kind of like increase to her AoE. But as she stands, she is fun. She is fun to play as, but she's just not really meta character. She doesn't define anything. She wasn't great at launch, and then she's kind of just been like very middle of the road throughout the first year of this game. But yeah, I think B tier is the perfect place to put her at the moment. She may go up a tier or two as I get her closer to 150, as I get her more champion levels in, as much as champion levels don't really do anything. You know, I feel like she's the character that I want to be really good, but at the moment she's just kind of lacking She's lacking a bit of sauce, a bit of pizzazz, and that's kind of why I've put her in the middle of the road. She's fun, she's fine to play as, but she lacks that je ne sais quoi that I need in a character for them to be like upper echelon. We then have the A tier, which is the most stacked. We've got 4 characters here to go through. We've got Thor, Hulk, Cap, and Black Panther. This is where I put Black Panther in the A tier. So he's at the top of A tier. So he's really good, but he's not the new best character in the game. Thor I put like way at the bottom of the list last time, but the more I play Thor, the more I like him. He is so much fun, and the amount of damage that he can get off, even at like low levels, really impressive. The same goes for Hulk. Hulk is a damage powerhouse. His healing is immense. He can basically never die. If you build him right, he will never die. And that makes him really good for OLTs. He's actually really good for fighting Monica because if you build right into his ranged, you can get like 6 or 7 hits off of his like big boulder, which is immense. And pair that up and that can do gamma damage as well if you have like the right gear into it. Pair that up with the damage bonus that you get from killing the clones. His damage will be off the charts. He can do that fight in seconds. He can basically do any fight in seconds. But the only thing that really gets him down for me is his like iconic attack. When you're fighting a bigger scale enemy, it's really annoying because he'll try and grab them, but he won't be able to. If you hold down square, which for any other character will do like an iconic attack, but for him it's to grab an enemy. And with anything above a small enemy, he just won't do anything if you do that. So you need to kind of be aware of that when fighting like an Exo, Dreadnought, or a Adaptoid. You kind of need to keep aware that you can't hold square, otherwise you'll just do nothing and you're vulnerable. But everything else about his kit, the amount of damage that he does and it does kind of limit what he can do, but most of the time you're going to have enemies to grab anyway, and you can still attack with those. But it kind of limits when he's in a boss fight, because he can't do like a really big attack then, outside of his ultimate heroic, which is amazing, and his other heroic, which is the most frustrating in the game because of how far it takes you from the enemy. You kind of have to line it up properly, which is annoying because when you're playing as Hulk, you just want to get in and smash. You don't want to have to play kind of tactics with it. Then we have Cap, who was my second favourite character in the game. He's now my third favourite character in the game, but still, he is great. Cap is great. There is nothing wrong with Cap. He can basically do it all. He's just very simple. He's just very simple, very get in, get out. You know, he doesn't really have a heal. That's why I've put him so low down. His rally cry doesn't really do much. It taunts enemies, but it doesn't do much outside of that. And a taunt, I don't see that as a very helpful buff. It's only helpful when you're playing with other players. Outside of that, it's not really playable. It's not really like worthwhile when doing story stuff or when doing single player stuff. So that kind of makes his support not nigh on useless. Everything else about the character is great, but his support is kind of useless when you're not playing co-op or anything. We then have Black Panther, who's the new shiny character. He's second best character in the game as of where I'm sitting right now. He has the possibility to be the best if I get him fully maxed out, and I do want to, because he's one of those characters where when playing him, he makes you feel really good at the game, even when you're not. Because that's what I noticed just when jumping in with him for the first time. He actively felt like, wow, I am great. I am amazing at this game. And then you switch to a different character, and you're like, wow, I suck. But yeah, I really love Black Panther. He can do so much, but his assault heroic is another one of those beam forward attacks. He just throws the spear. It can pin enemies, but if you upgrade it to anything past that, it won't pin enemies, but it will do a bit more AoE, and it can pull enemies in, which is cool. But again, you have to play tactics with it. And his ultimate heroic has one of the best animations in the game, though, with the Panther coming out and charging. But again, it's like a straightforward attack, so you can still do it in the wrong direction and not hit anything, and that's quite annoying. But everything else about his kit is intrinsic, great. Yeah, I can't say much bad about Black Panther. He works really well in his Kamala beads, his support. Possibly the best support in the game. It does damage over time to enemies and heals you over time as well. Man, I cannot recommend building into Black Panther enough. He's such a good character. But in my S tier, we have the best character in the game as of right now. My favourite character, Hawkeye. Hawkeye should not be this good, but he is this good. I both love it and hate it. I wanted Black Panther to knock him off its pedestal, but he didn't. As of right now, at least, he could. But right now, Hawkeye has the best healing in the game. He can do the most damage. He's the most fun. He's the most flexible when it comes to how you want to build him. He could just do it all. He's got great melee, great ranged. He's just an all-around great character. He's really, really fun. And that's all I can say. Everything that I've said about Hawkeye, I've said a million times before. He is the best character in the game, hands down. But yeah, quick recap: D tier, Kate Bishop; C tier, Iron Man; B tier, Kamala Khan and Black Widow; A tier, Thor, Hulk, Cap, Black Panther; and S tier is Hawkeye. I'm excited to see which other characters get introduced, get folded in. I'm excited to see where Spider-Man fits in this tier list. And let me know how you feel about doing this kind of video as a tier list instead of doing it as the from worst to best ranking thing that I did last time. Because I know that first character ranking that I did, that got really good views, but the second one didn't. I hope this one gets as good views as the first one, if not better. But yeah, let me know if you prefer doing it like this, or if you prefer doing it how I did it before. We're getting to the point where we're getting so many characters in the game that doing it like this makes more sense, but I just didn't feel like with 8 characters it justified doing a tier list. But now 9, it kind of justifies doing a tier list more, and we can have more characters going into each of the different tiers. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.